this week's Ruby challenge. So what we're going to be doing here is accessing data from Weather Underground and making it available from a command line script. So I've already went ahead and got my API key. So let's jump over to the terminal. So I have that stored in a little file called API key, just so I don't have to display it in the video. Even though it's just some random free account, it's better just not to make your API keys public. So I'm gonna go ahead and open up Pry, and let's load in that file. So now I have my API key accessible. Let's also load in OpenURI, the Ruby module we can use to grab the data from the Weather Underground website. So require OpenURI. Great. So OpenURI has a nice function, open. And what we can do with that is read the data, which returns the string. So let's copy this and let's stick in our URL. And then let me put in my API key, which I have stored in the constant API key. Cool. So a big long string of JSON data in the Ruby string. So according characters escaped and kind of difficult to read, but you can kind of see it's weather data from Colorado Springs, so on and so forth. Let's just not read that because that isn't very nice to read. So what we're going to use to actually parse this JSON data is the JSON module. So let's go ahead and require that. And let's store this string into a local variable. So I'm just going to call that weather JSON. And we're going to redo this command. So this will go and fetch the data again from that server, put it into a string using that read command, and then store it in the weather JSON local variable. Cool. So now that I have that data in the local variable, let's use our JSON gem. So JSON has a nice class method called parse. And let's send it the argument weather JSON. Cool. So now we have all our data in a Ruby hash, and we can do stuff as Ryan was saying. So let's store this Ruby hash in a local variable as well. So I don't want to call JSON.parse every time, I just want a hash that I can reuse. So let's say JSON parse JSON equals this. Cool. So now that we have parse JSON as a local variable, we can do things like access the key current observation, another hash. So what do we want to access from here? Oh, the temperature. So we could say something like the temperature in Fahrenheit. Wow, it's 66.4 degrees Fahrenheit in Colorado Springs. So essentially you'll be doing something along these lines in your Ruby script. Moving forward, how do we make this accessible from our command line? So I'm going to go ahead and get out of Pry, and I'm going to create a file called weather.rb, and I'm just going to say puts hello world I'll let you guys focus on creating the methods and such that you need to actually get the data, but for the purposes of introducing the challenge, I'm just going to say puts hello world from the script. So great, now I have the script and I can say ruby weather.rb. Wow, hello world. But how do I actually make it so it's executable? So what we need to do first is specify what should be running the file. So using this line of code, we are telling the running shell to use the environment version of Ruby. So because often you use RVM, you know, you'll change Ruby versions a lot. So we're just going to say use whatever's currently in the running shell. So mine being 1.9.3, the macOS system default being 1.8.7. Just use your environment version. So let's get out of here. And now how do we make this executable? So what you'll need to use for that is something called chmod. You can read up on the specifics of it, but for the purposes of this talk, I'm just going to say chmod plus x and the weather.rb. What this plus x will do is add executable permissions to the weather.rb file. Great. Now we can say /weather.rb. Hello world, right? Wow, that's pretty sweet. So now I want to access it from something just called weather. So I'm going to create a link and say weather rb and just call the link weather. So now I can say /weather and it returns the same thing. Great. So I don't want to have to say /weather, and what if I go into a parent directory? You know, there's no weather.rb file or directory here, right? So how do we make this accessible from everywhere? So what your shell looks at is something called path. So what the path does is looks in each of these directories, what your shell does, I should say, is looks in each of these directories and finds executables. So everything from ls to chmod itself exists as an executable in one of these directories. So what you need to do is either add this weather link to an existing one of these directories or add one. So I have one set up in my home directory called bin, and I store little scripts in there. So what I'm going to do is move this weather in here so I can say something like weather, and it won't tell me no such file or directory. So moving weather into my home directory /bin, I can then thereafter say weather, and ideally it would have the scripts necessary in order to grab the data from underground weather and display the current temperature in my city. Cool. So that about does it for the introduction. Feel free to contact any of us if you have any questions. Good luck.